Hi, today we're going to make baklava, and in order to do that we have a lot of yummy stuff here. One of the things we have, 2 sticks melted unsalted butter. If you can get unclarified, even better. I have 2 cups of ground walnuts and almonds, a little less almonds than walnuts. And I have some organic sugar, 1 cup. I have cloves and cinnamon, and finally the piece de la resistance, I have the filo dough. Now with the filo dough, as you're working with it, you have to keep it covered, otherwise it gets really hard really fast. The first thing I'm going to do with the filo dough is I'm going to uncover it and I'm going to cut it down to the size I want, and I can do this with my handy dandy pizza cutter. And you're going to need that pizza cutter later. And boom, you have filo dough at the exact size you want. So we're going to cover it back up here for just a second. By the way, I like to cover my hair because when I'm working with food, I don't like to leave any deposits. Get your little pastry brush out, and you're going to cover the bottom of the pan with butter. Real sweet, creamy Land O'Lakes butter. Yum. And when it's firmly covered, sorry about that. When it's firmly covered, let me wash my hands. You are going to, and by the way, I wipe down my counters pretty thoroughly and keep my cat hair away from it. You're going to put the first piece of filo dough right there, and it's going to start sucking up that butter. Yum. And then you're just going to put more on top. Now, in these packages of filo dough, there's usually 2 packages in it. For a full pan, I tend to use almost both of those because I like the baklava to be really thick and crispy and yummy. And you're going to just, and it doesn't matter if you cover every part of it. Like for instance, if there's any broken pieces or anything like that, just toss them in because it all ends up in the cake pan as square. And I'd like to talk to you about making this recipe a little bit healthier, and you can do that. You'll notice I'm using organic sugar. Organic sugar is great, but sugar in all, if you were going to make this a little healthy, you'd only put like maybe 1/4 cup, and instead of using butter, you would use egg whites. If there are any Greeks out there, very sorry I hurt your feelings. But yes, you can make baklava very healthy, well, a little bit healthier. Still got the filo dough in it. And you're gonna, I would say if you want to do this quickly, only do about 6 layers. I'm probably going to do about 8 or 10 layers. By the way, it's our company potluck tomorrow for our department, so this is not being eaten today. See, I'm putting it on pretty thick there. And by the way, your count doesn't have to be exact. I'm not sure whether I'm at 5 or 6, but I'll just keep going. The thicker the better. And honestly, you can do up to two different layers of nuts and make it really thick. Most restaurants I've seen put like this huge gobbing layer of nuts on there, and my favorite part of the baklava is actually the pastry. So if I'm going to have a lot of nuts in this, I'm actually going to put just easy on the nuts, another layer of filo dough, and then more nuts, and then another layer of filo dough. By the way, you can also make this even healthier by using agave to smother it instead of honey. Nothing wrong with honey, it's good for you, but agave has just a little bit less carbs in it, a little more antioxidants, so that's got to be a good thing. And I think I'm at about 9 here. Let's do one more for the road. You can do as little as 6 on this, by the way. When people read the instructions for baklava, they usually think it's really, really hard, simply because of this process right here where you're layering it. And it's not. I mean, very little. It's just like putting together a puzzle. Now, you'll see I scattered the almonds and the walnuts throughout, and it's a thin layer. You can put more in. This is 2 cups. I've seen as many as 4 cups in there if you like lots of nuts. And then you're going to take your sugar. As I said, this is the organic sugar, so it's a little bit browner, but it all absorbs pretty well. And I like to scatter it. Now, some people mix this up, mix the nuts and the cloves and stuff like that up in a bowl before they put it on top of the filo dough, and I don't, because some of the ingredients settle and then you've got a big glob of something here, something there. And see, as you can tell from the sugar, from the looks, the sugar is almost completely covered the nuts, and I didn't quite use that whole cup, but almost. And this is my favorite part. The cloves, to me, are what make the baklava. And most people put about a teaspoon in. I probably usually end up putting about 2 teaspoons of baklava in here. And then most people, the people who don't like the cloves, usually go more for the cinnamon. I usually put about a teaspoon of cinnamon in there. Well, just a second here. Brand new cinnamon. Sorry, not your Julia child, but as you can see, about a teaspoon. And then I like to butter that up and sprinkle some butter on top of that mixture with your brush. And then start the layering process again. That first one is a booger. And don't stress if your pan's a little off. As far as it gets wider, you can just scatter the filo dough throughout. And if it bunches up a little bit, that's okay, because it's crunchy and yummy and buttery. And it'll all look really pretty after we're done. By the way, before you start this process, you do need to heat your oven to about 350. Make sure your butter's melted before you do that, because that takes a little bit of time. Melt it on a low heat so you don't burn it. And I like to tuck in the edges a little bit. And as you can see, you don't have to hold the pastry as much now that you have a few layers on there. Tuck in those edges. By the way, with the filo dough, you can defrost. You can keep it frozen until you need it and then defrost it for about 8 hours in the fridge or 3 hours on your counter. I don't like it. No more than that or it gets a little bit soggy. And I'm just gonna pile on until I get bored with this or you get bored with it. All in all, the prep time for this is probably, once you get really good at it, probably about 5 to 10 minutes. And then after you prep it, what you're going to do is you're going to stick it in the fridge for about a half an hour. And about 10 minutes into there, I start heating up the oven, if I haven't got some already prepared in the fridge. Sorry about that. And some people actually don't stick it in the fridge, but there's a very good reason for sticking it in the fridge, and that is it makes it easier to cut. And that's what the pizza cutter comes in for. Your filo dough can be found in the pastry section where the pie shells and stuff like that are, and you can make a lot of really good stuff with it. You can make like a spinach kind of dish with crispy stuff and then a spinach and meat filling. I've actually seen people make little pies in muffin tins and then harden the filo dough up and then stuff it with like meringue and things like that. So you can do a lot of fun things. You hear noise in the background. It's my cat being a demon because he can't get on the counter. And I think we have a pretty thick baklava there. So one more layer of butter and we'll put it in the fridge for 30 minutes. So the oven light just went off and I'm going to take the baklava out of the fridge, and what you're going to do here is something with the pizza cutter, and I actually like to cut the pieces sort of small, reason being even healthy. It's about 12 grams of fat per bite. Very sinful. And you are actually going to use the pizza cutter one more time when it comes out of the oven. So, and see how it just sort of crisply cuts. You might need to hold it down a little bit. Okay, and we're going to stick it in the oven at 350 for about 23 to 25 minutes. And while it's baking, and by the way, this is what it looks like now, while it's baking, I am going to heat the honey on about 2 on the stove. I don't want it to boil over, but I want it to bubble a little bit. And I'll be back with you in about 25 minutes. So I'm just about ready to take the baklava out of the oven and take the honey off of the stove. For your information, the honey looks a little bit like that. It's not boiling, but it's got a little bit of a bubble to it, and I like that. And a lot of people don't cook their honey before they do their baklava. I do, for the reason it makes the pastry a little more gooey and it holds it together as well, and I like that. So we're waiting for the anticipated moment, the great event, the moment the dinger goes off. And in case you're wondering, there it is. And if that isn't pretty, I don't know what is. What we're going to do is we're going to take the pizza cutter one more time. And we do this so that when people take it out of the pan, it comes out a little bit easier. And I go a little bit further as well. And I take a knife through and I cut the edges. And then finally, and by the way, this is 2 cups of honey. And so, for the final look, lift this up for you to see it. And thank you for watching my recipe.